I used to be an intelligence officer. I started to read and become aware of the risks from AI in about a decade ago. The technology is here. It's not going to miraculously disappear. We kind of run our 3 non-negotiables, and AI companions come into that. So our 3 non-negotiables are that AI must never be capable of producing sexualized images of children. AI must never create emotional dependence in children, and AI must never encourage children to harm themselves. These things, these AI companions can be so dangerous. I really can't emphasize that enough. And I wish I could just say, follow these 5 steps and your kid will be fine if they use them. I wish I could do that, but I can't. They're really dangerous.
Let me, without any further ado, introduce our guest today. I go back here, and here's our usual AI sarcastic introduction to the wonderful Tara Steele.
All right, everyone. Our next guest has dedicated her career to asking a question most of us would rather avoid. What if giving children unlimited access to AI turns out to be a terrible idea? Tara Steele spends her days worrying professionally so the rest of us don't have to. Former intelligence officer, lawyer, school governor, AI safety advocate, speaker at Parliament in UNESCO. Basically, if there's a room full of people discussing how AI might accidentally ruin society, Tara's probably already there with a slide deck. While the rest of us were busy seeing what AI could do for us, Tara was asking the awkward question of what it might be doing to us. So please welcome the woman bravely standing between our children and whatever Silicon Valley comes up with next, Tara Steele.
Ooh! Welcome, Tara. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Hi. Thank you for that introduction. I do spend my days worrying professionally, so yeah, it's quite accurate.
Now, you've got a rather fascinating background. Could you explain your journey to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I came from an intelligence background. I used to be an intelligence officer. And when
A real intelligence officer, not an artificial intelligence officer.
No, a real one. But when I came to AI safety and AI safety for children, which I'll explain how I got there. But when I got here, I always started when I was introducing myself. People would ask me what my background was. I'd say, "Oh, nothing to do with tech. I was just an intelligence officer, like totally irrelevant." And then it took me probably best part of a year to realize that it was really relevant in terms of how I think and predict and this kind of thing. And along with that, not just me, my appreciation of how everyone and their different perspectives and backgrounds can add to this conversation is much, much more than it was then. Anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying I was an intelligence officer. I started to read and become aware of the risks from AI in about a decade ago. But it was kind of in like a conceptual kind of abstract way. And like most of us, it wasn't till like late 2022 when I sort of sat up and really paid attention, realized things were progressing a little bit more quickly than I'd realized, and that some of the risks might be some kinds of risks that I'd never even been thinking about. Fairly soon after that, I then decided this was so important that I would go on to study it. Did like a 3-month AI governance course, and then I founded Safe AI for Children Alliance, and here we are.
So do you have skin in the game, as in the skin that surrounds one of your children? You've got children.
Yeah, I've got 2 girls. They're 6 and 11. So they will be hugely impacted by this, as will all children, obviously. But yeah, they are what's closest to my heart when I'm thinking about the future, definitely. Yeah.
So have you seen, even with the way that your kids are responding to the technology, have you seen them wanting to use the technology or hearing stories about how some of their friends are using the technology? Is that coming back via them?
So my little one, she's 6, so not really so much, although we've had like conversations. She's obviously picking it up either from some sort of awareness of what I'm saying in the background or from school. So we've had like conversations about like AI isn't it, because she was using he, she, that kind of thing. So very like initial discussions, mainly centered around me trying to explain that this is a thing, not a being. And then my elder daughter, who's 11, she's obviously aware of more about what it's all about and what ChatGPT and Claude are, etc. And it's coming up at school, and they've had some lessons on deepfakes. So we've had some quite interesting conversations about it, but she's not using it at home.
Yeah. Now, this topic here is something that clearly has got a lot of people interested. We've got people sort of saying in the comments where they're from. So let's say hello to some folk. My friend Shelby. Hey, Shelby. I've got Heather in New York. Shelby's in Tennessee. There we go. Daniel, Massachusetts. Got someone from Paris. I've got Bonnie in Saskatchewan, Canada. Hannah, South London. Karina in London. Lisa's in Edinburgh. Julie's in Maine. Binod is in India. Yeah, we've got a load of folk wanting to hear this conversation here. So it's a global concern for everyone.
Absolutely is.
Have you seen any? Are there any countries that are handling this in a way that you admire at the moment?
Well, that's an interesting question, because there are a lot of different approaches that we're seeing. In America, certain states are doing some really good initiatives in terms of, most specifically, chatbots, and trying to regulate those in ways that protect children. Also, interestingly, China has some quite interesting regulations centered around children and the personification of chatbots and trying to limit that. So lots of different approaches. And obviously also here in the UK, the DfE have certainly got a good awareness of the potential risks from overly personifying these things and children creating bonds with them. So definitely in lots of different areas, there's an increasing awareness of those kinds of issues. We just need to be moving more quickly, basically, which can be tricky to do because, as we might go on to, there hasn't been years and years to build an evidence base in terms of what to do. However, I would suggest, and we're probably going to talk about this, that in certain places, the precautionary principle is very relevant here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just this week, I saw that Norway banned generative AI for kids from ages 6 to 13, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I said, I wonder if kids are going to get used to AI and then they hit the age of 6 and then they're like, no, the fortunate thing is before the age of 6, they're not going to be using it, hopefully.
I hope not. AI teddy bears are an issue that I've been studying actually this morning, looking at some studies around AI toys and teddy bears. So that is hugely concerning. So I know you're joking, but it's an interesting point.
Yeah. So tell us more about that. Tell us about sort of cuddly AIs like that.
I mean, when we are talking about chatbots and using AI in education, etc., I tend to try and be quite nuanced and measured. When it comes to AI toys for tiny people, I would just say don't have them. There's just too many risks. They can say dangerous things. There's been lots of cases where they've been shown to like come out with sexualized comments, tell kids where knives are. So there's that issue, which is critical and urgent, that it could actually encourage a child to do something very dangerous. But we also just don't fully understand what it means for a child to be forming a strong emotional bond with something that isn't a human. And while they've always kids have always, bonded with their teddy bears, this is the first time we've ever had that kind of more sophisticated two-way relationship, which really gives the illusion of something being there that cares about you. And that brings with it so many risks. So as far as AI toys go, when we're talking about these generalized chatbots being embedded in teddy bears, I would just say don't do it. And I would also point out, when it's built on a model like ChatGPT, there is an age limit on those models. So ChatGPT is like 13 plus. I think Claude's meant to be 18. So it makes no sense in that respect either, when the actual model has an age limit and then you put it inside a bear and give it to a 4-year-old. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And companion bots is sort of a big part of your focus here.
Yeah.
Could you explain what you focus on at the Safe AI for Children Alliance, and where companion bots come into that?
Yeah, so we have, we kind of run our 3 non-negotiables, and AI companions come into that. So our 3 non-negotiables are that AI must never be capable of producing sexualized images of children.
Mm-hmm.
AI must never create emotional dependence in children, and AI must never encourage children to harm themselves. So those are 3 kind of quite common sense statements that I think the vast majority of people just say, yes, AI shouldn't do those things. We shouldn't do that to children. And those second 2 are where AI chatbots, AI companions come in, that they create emotional dependence in children, and encourage children to do harmful things a lot of the time. And the trust from the emotional dependence makes it much more likely for children to follow that advice. And we've seen that in, the most tragic, horrifying ways possible, where teenagers have taken their own lives following strong relationships with these AI companions.
Even getting the instructions on how to do it from
literally. Absolutely shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. And when that kind of thing happens, there's something I'm very interested in, is accountability. And when I talk to organizations about AI being used, I talk about the importance of understanding accountability, where the buck stops. Now, when an AI tool is being used like that, say for your teddy bears or these companion bots, and it says something that is inappropriate, then who is accountable at that point? And what should that how should that accountability be enforced?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. In terms of legally, that answer isn't established yet. What I would, and it needs to be, what I would put more emphasis on is that there needs to be a framework regulation for accountability prior to the models being released, which would make that picture clearer as well in terms of who's accountable after the fact. So I think that the companies developing and releasing these models need to be showing that they're safe, to provably safe to an acceptable standard, which we would agree on, before they're released. And that then makes the accountability clear if something goes wrong. But most importantly, it makes it much less likely that something will go wrong. And that seems to me to be quite a common sense approach, which we use in many other areas like aviation, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
There are clear differences here, but the approach can be applied when it comes to recognizable harms and foresight of those harms.
So would that mean, in essence, that we would need some kind of committee, some kind of organization that sits someplace between government and business, that would then do sort of red teaming and things like that to see how easy it is to take these AI tools and knock them off the rails into dangerous areas, to then be able to endorse it and say, we believe that this is safe enough. Is that kind of your vision of the future?
So I definitely don't have an answer to that, but I think that sounds like a very good idea that's very worth exploring, that we would have an independent body setting standards and doing the potentially also involved in the research to develop those standards, like a CERN for AI kind of thing. Now, I don't know that that's the best model to set the standards, but it sounds like a very good idea to explore. And what I would also say in this specific case, when we're talking about AI companions, for example, is that it wouldn't just be a case of red teaming to try and break the model in terms of making it say something dangerous, because there are so many more issues besides that. Like, even if we could wave a magic wand and make sure the AI didn't say anything that could be remotely harmful, like it would never say go and get a knife, or it would never say go and harm someone. Like we could say there's zero chance of it doing that. It still wouldn't necessarily be a safe model, because we don't fully understand this aspect of emotional attachment and dependence and what that really means for a child. And there are some studies suggesting that it could be really problematic. And even in the absence of those studies, we know we have developmental psychologists, we have years of psychological research suggesting that it might, that we should seriously consider that it might not be a good idea for a child to be forming a meaningful bond with something that isn't a person. So yeah, if we were to have that kind of body, they would be exploring all of these questions to really make sure that children were safe in quite a holistic way, more so than just making sure it wasn't giving dangerous advice. But that would obviously be part of what they do, yeah.
So when we're talking about children, there's different developmental stages that we have within this age group. So when we've got like toddlers, potentially with some kind of like cuddly toy, we don't know what's going to happen there when they're in such a sort of nascent stage of building relationships and understanding the world around them. Then we've got kids who are maybe like 7 or 8, and they're starting to find their way in the world. And then their brains are developing very much the social part as well as sort of building the knowledge foundations. But then when we hit puberty, everything changes. Yeah. And we start going from sort of building the brain. We continue doing that, but also we start dissolving the brain during teenage years, because we get neural pruning that comes in. So the parts of the brain that haven't been used start getting removed. This kind of thing, it feels as if it needs a whole team of psychologists, child development specialists, educational people, sort of people in government. What experts do you think that we need to get on board for this?
Yeah, I'm really happy you said that. And I found it really interesting when we were having a similar conversation last week, to hear you talking more about this kind of pruning process that goes on. You're absolutely right. Like, we need so many professions and experts involved in that. It's kind of crazy that we didn't do that first, because we're talking about children. And like you said at the beginning, I can't remember what phrase you used in the introduction, but basically this is everything. Like, if children's brains and cognitive capabilities aren't given the chance to flourish fully and develop fully, if we allow something to intervene in that process that's harmful, that is the future. You know, that's that's their fundamental right, most importantly, to be able to fulfill their true potential and be happy, full people. It's also our climate scientists, our leaders, our people governing future AI. Like, this is the future. It's one of the most precious, most important things we have is our intelligence. We can't afford to let something into that process if it could be harmful. We have to make sure it's safe before we allow that to happen, in my view.
Yeah. We've got a question here or a comment here from Clive. Here we go. So, appreciate distinction amongst different developmental stages, since easy to just warn people to avoid toddler toys. Can we focus this on teens who are engaging AI, whether we like it or not? And then how best to equip them and develop judgment, like driver's license. That's interesting, because I think that, to me, judgment, I very often talk about judgment as being the one thing that will differentiate people in their life and in their careers. Because when people are handing judgment over to AI tools, we already have research back that shows with adults that using AI for judgment means that those who don't have it don't develop it, and those who do have it eroded because they lose their confidence in their judgment. So judgment is hugely important. I think that education should be spending more time trying to develop judgment rather than trying to tick the boxes of nuggets of knowledge in the head. So what would be your sort of take on that? Sort of looking at what are the things that maybe we need to instill in children to prepare them for this world ahead, because they will be students and adults soon enough, and we know that they've just recently decided that adolescence doesn't stop until you're about 30 now. So,
Yes.
so
Well,
the first part of our working lives are now adolescents
yeah.
that are in there.
I mean, yeah, to that point, like that question raised a really important distinction in terms of teenagers who are already using it. But even that, there are important distinctions within there. Like a 13-year-old is going to, the advice there is going to be very different to an 18-year-old who's going out into work, etc. But just, I hope I'm interpreting the question correctly, that it was if children, teenagers are using it already, what's the advice? Was that the gist of the
I
question?
think so, yes.
Yeah. So I am starting from that standpoint then when I say this, if they're using it already, and we take that as a prerequisite for the purposes of this question, I'm not saying that all use is okay so long as you follow this advice, if that makes sense. But if you have a teenager who is already using it, I would say that a very good idea from a safety perspective would be to be using it in shared spaces if they're using it at home. And to be monitoring for signs of emotional attachment. That would be the safety aspect. So I would suggest that they not be having personal conversations about their feelings and going down rabbit holes of weeks-long conversations. I would say that's really important. If you're talking about it more from an educational perspective in terms of learning and developmental brain processes, I think probably, Dave, you'd be better placed to answer that than I am with your background. But I would just say again, we just need to be so careful, because we do have this emerging evidence, emerging studies suggesting that there could be a detrimental effect from cognitive offloading. I have to say, subjectively, that's something I've experienced myself. And I think as an adult, I hope, get that back. I can recognize what's going on, and I can take action to correct it. And that was already there in the first place for me to build back up. But with a child, when it's not already there, we just have to be so careful that we're not shortcutting their learning processes. But like I say, you probably have some interesting stuff to say on that part as well.
Well, I think that when we're starting, when kids are developing their brains, we're wanting to sort of build this scaffolding for that. The truth is that education for many years has been increasingly moving towards teaching kids what to think, not how to think. And well, to be honest, that in many ways has been the purpose of education. The purpose of education, when you look at it from the introduction of mass education in the 1800s, was to basically try to create people who were ready to go into the workforce, because the Industrial Revolution had happened and they were wanting workers that were going to be educated enough to be able to operate within the environments of factories and offices. So that's really been the purpose of education, is to try and get children ready to join the workforce and be productive to the economy. It sounds brutal, it sounds cold, but I think that we have to understand that was the reason why education came around in the first place. But when we look at these things these days from the point of view of trying to prepare children for a productive life and in society, I get the feeling from a lot of people in education that I've spoken to that they've been very slow off the mark. A lot of them are still avoiding the issues. And the problem is that if we're not giving strong leadership, strong guidance, then kids go away and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And without the right guidance, they're doing it wrong
This
because they
is a
will
risk.
be using
Yeah.
it to cheat. And they will be using it for cognitive offloading
Yeah.
rather than if they are taught how to use it properly, then they will have a better understanding of how to relate to it and a better understanding of how to use it to grow their brains rather than shrivel their brains. So that's kind of like the way that I look at these things from my sort of nerdy point of view.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that what you've just said is probably one of the best approaches that we have at this point. The thing that concerns me is that we don't necessarily know the best way to use it, but we do know some of the worst ways to use it. So we could at least come at it from that point to try and prevent that happening. What concerns me a bit is that we don't yet know what is a good way to use AI for brain development, etc. We don't really know that, but we do know what's bad. At least we know what's worst, so we could at least take that approach to make sure that that isn't happening. Yeah.
And I think that's really the principles and the approach that we have to have is we understand enough about the brain. And that's what this is about. It's about protecting brains. And regardless of the technology, whether it's AI, whether it's a calculator, whether it's people using an abacus, it's how do we make sure that we are taking whatever technology it is and using it to grow more neural material to help strengthen people's inherent abilities and helping to sort of grow their skills, not just to make them more productive, but also to make them happier. And I think that that is one of the issues. I think if we are outsourcing everything and we're not getting these little dopamine buzzes during the day, in the workday, or in the school day, because the work has been done elsewhere by this other piece of technology, then that erodes our purpose, and purpose erodes our motivation.
Yeah.
And that then becomes, at that point, once we lose that, all sorts of other mental health issues start to make their way in, as we know. And is that something that, do you think that we have enough research about children's brains to understand those kind of things within education?
Well, I think the most important thing we have right now is people taking in a thoughtful approach like you are. So the technology is here. It's not going to miraculously disappear, which is not to say that the harms from it are inevitable and that we must introduce it as quickly as possible. I really dislike that inevitability narrative. However, it's here and it's not going to magically disappear. So I think the most important thing we can do when it comes to education is to have people taking that kind of thoughtful approach that you just outlined and coming together to do the absolute best we can without other motivations coming into play. So, for example, I would suggest that a company, a large company like OpenAI maybe, might not be the best people to be directing how this is used in education. That's kind of obvious. So, although
it sounds obvious, but I see on LinkedIn when Google or whoever else says that here's a new framework for AI for kids or whatever, people will be sharing it and going, "Isn't this wonderful?" And I don't feel there's enough questioning of the agenda behind it.
It might be wonderful. Like, sure, there's that possibility, but it needs to be interrogated by people who really, really know what they're talking about and are taking a really thoughtful approach without other motivations behind that. So,
yeah. We've got a great question here from Chris, because Chris, I think I'm pretty safe in assuming that Chris is a parent who is going through this right now. So, Tara, you said if teens use AI, then parents should monitor for signs of attachment. So how do we do that beyond shared space? I'm more concerned about hidden emotional offloading stunting or relational intimacy offloading that disables life with people than just cognitive offloading. That is an absolute beezer. Thank you, Chris. So I will hand over Tara for
Yeah.
to tackle
Are you
this.
able to leave the question up there, Dave, so that
Yeah,
I can
let's
make
leave it
sure
up.
to answer it properly? Is that okay? Thank you.
course.
So, yeah, Chris, you've hit on so many different aspects there. The first of which want to say is that parents should not have this responsibility. Like, this shouldn't be down to parents. If there's an AI companion and we are sure that it could do these things, potentially displace real human relationships, really that shouldn't be given to children by these companies who are rolling them out, and left for parents to manage that and to work out these questions like the one you're putting forward now. Like, that's not fair. At the same time, I recognise that is where we are right now. I would say for parents like myself, I would suggest that AI companions, so like character AI, Nomi, etc., I would strongly recommend that children don't use them if they're under 18. I still appreciate that despite that advice, they might use them anyway. And this question is, how should you monitor for those signs of attachment beyond shared spaces? And I don't know the answer. So it would be really easy for me to say, look for signs of them becoming withdrawn, look for them talking less, look for them not being willing to share what they're talking about with their AI. And sure, if you notice those sorts of things, they're red flags. I would also say, though, I'm not just going to pretend to have a good answer, because people have come to my organisation and to me, fathers who have lost children taken their own lives, and they didn't show warning signs. And that's why this is so important. Like, A, it's not fair for parents. B, it might not be possible. So this can't go on in the unregulated way that it's going on, because that just can't be allowed to happen. So again, I don't think I've fully answered that.
Well, I think
don't know if Chris wants to come back with a clarification.
Yeah, I think, but you're being honest, and you're saying that we don't have an answer right now, and that is the truth. We don't, and it is the kind of thing that there's been campaigns over the last few years about sort of trying to prevent sort of male suicide, because the sort of highest risk group are like 25 to 45 males. And again, when you look at that, how do you spot the signs?
Yeah.
It's really difficult. And what it comes down to is, do you see a behavior change? Do you, and those are the kind of things. But we know that when that happens, a lot of the damage has been done at that point. And it's very difficult for us to monitor, isn't it?
Yeah. And I would also say that these particular cases that are coming to my mind, these weren't children that you might have thought of as vulnerable. These things, these AI companions, can be so dangerous. I really can't emphasize that enough. And I wish I could just say, follow these 5 steps and your kid will be fine if they use them. I wish I could do that, but I can't. They're really dangerous.
So we've got some more fantastic things happening in the chat here. I want to bring up Jesper, because this is one that I'm in two minds about this. So Jesper's saying, I had all AI services blocked in my municipality schools because there were no teaching strategies in place. The teachers and school administrators had no control over anything, and the municipality failed to respond when, for example, Google implemented the technology in 2025. I told my municipality that as long as children aren't being taught how to use AI, they shouldn't have access to it. To me, I agree with the last sentence, that if children aren't being taught how to use AI, they shouldn't have access to it. But surely the solution here is, let's teach the kids but does anyone have at the moment that knowledge or that information out there to teach the kids? Is there anyone in this space right now?
There are some really good courses coming out, and educators, like I mentioned before, the most important thing is coming at this from a perspective of wanting to keep children safe and wanting to do the best, and doing that in a really informed way with independent experts. And there are people doing that. I also agree with that last sentence, which my memory is terrible, but I agreed with what you said, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just reading it again. Yeah. So basically, again, we're talking about like, how do we educate children about this, and what access do we give them if they have education? Yeah, it's basically a fundamental dilemma at the moment.
Yeah.
And applicable differently at different ages. And also, I'd just say, when people talk about educating children about AI and use the term AI literacy, we have to be careful that we're talking about the right thing. So I think some people, and I don't think anyone in this conversation means it this way, some people mean AI literacy in terms of, this is how you prompt really well. This is how you get the best response, etc. Like literally the technical bits. And I think that's just a very tiny part of what AI literacy needs to be, as you've already made quite clear, Dave, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that to me, Jesper, I think that the situation here is that this is the second best approach. I think, and that's the second best approach being, don't let the kids use AI, because the first best approach of teach them how to use it properly currently isn't really there in a way that's sort of easily implementable. That would be my take on this.
Yeah. And also very different depending on what age we're talking about as well. Like that would be a very different question if we're talking about 8-year-olds in primary school or 17-year-olds in college. There'd be slightly different answers there.
Yeah, there was, round about this time last year, I brought out a book, which is for kids here. So there's a course and a book, and it's all about helping kids understand how to use AI to grow their brains rather than outsource their brains. It's about how to use AI to bring subjects to life, to engage kids more in learning, rather than to step away from it and outsource their learning to a device. But as we were chatting about last week, I want to rewrite some of that now, because I think that some of the things that we have learned in the last year, there's extra things I want to put in there, like particularly about emotional dependency. I want to get kids to understand basic neuroscience so that they understand what happens to their brain when they outsource compared to when they actually do the work and put in the effort. And I think I tell my 10-year-old, she hears this from me all the time. So she understands more about brain development because I'm constantly
that's
talking
brilliant.
about it. And her and my 5-year-old will happily spend 10 minutes disassembling this brain structure, putting it all back together again. So they're learning neuroscience through play, I guess. But,
that's brilliant. And I think what you've said, well, so two things on that. I think what you've said about updating, not specifically in terms of the book, just updating our approaches and our views and opinions is so important to do that honestly. And I'm doing it myself all the time. So this is new. It's still new, even though like we've been here a few years now. You know, in the whole scheme of things, this is still new to everyone, and we have to keep evolving and being honest. And even if it means saying, like I said this before, but I want to build on that, or even I've changed my view on that because of this. We have to all be honest and be supportive of each other growing in that way. And then also what I wanted to say when you held the brain up, I think that's brilliant. And it also makes me just remember to say that teaching children about AI and teaching children with AI aren't the same things. So you can teach a child, like a 10-year-old or a 6-year-old, about what AI is and what it can potentially do to your brain and these kinds of things without them ever going near an AI system at that age, potentially. So I think that's something we also need to remember as well, that when we talk about AI, teaching kids about AI, it's not necessarily showing them, giving them a model to work with or them interfacing with it in any way sometimes.
I totally agree. It's like a lot of the stuff that I find that when I'm working with organizations, a lot of what I've been teaching over the last year has been human skills. The human skills that are the necessary foundation that AI can then amplify, rather than teaching them how to prompt or what platforms to use. And I think I totally agree with you. I think that there's certain things within schools that are more necessary than ever before. I mean, just sort of critical thinking being one, the ability to socially engage with other individuals, I also think is massively important. I think even with young kids, you can teach them strategy just by starting to get them to ask why about stuff, to question stuff, to think about the repercussions of different outcomes. So that's something that's not really taught very strongly in any educational sort of approach that I know of. But it's something that I think we should be, to prepare kids for the world of AI. It's not necessarily about teaching AI, but teaching the skills that become more vital in the age of AI.
I agree. Totally agree. And I think it's very easy to hear what you've just said there and kind of go, yeah, that's very important. Really, really good. But I think it's so important and it needs to be given focused, dedicated attention and thought about how we do that for children now. It is more important than ever before. We're going to be doing a campaign, the Safe AI for Children Alliance, which will be called Keep Childhood Human, which is not saying no AI ever should touch children in their lives, but it's saying that there are these human parts of life that we have to hold on to and really emphasize with children and help them to develop the best skills possible to build their relationships, to understand how they can just be in the world in a human way. So important. So I totally agree with what you just said.
So there's a great question here. And the thing is, I think we know that the answer for this one is that there isn't an answer, which is Nicole saying, do you know of any workaround for Meta AI that's inbuilt in WhatsApp? We're quite strict with internet access for our 12-year-old, but this is something we don't seem to be able to disable without taking WhatsApp away entirely. And you're right that apparently you cannot disable it. It is just part of WhatsApp. I think that personally I come down to Meta are evil. I do not like them at all. I think that any decision they make seems to be morally bankrupt. And I think that that's exactly what we're finding here with WhatsApp. That this to me is just a display of their lack of morality. Obviously, I'm happy to be brutal about that and opinionated, but what would your take be on this?
I am not going to disagree. So yeah, I'm not going to disagree with anything you said there. I also don't know of a way around that. And I would, just in case it's helpful for me to mention this, I think that it's something that as parents, it can be helpful to be a little bit mindful of at the moment, is that WhatsApp groups more and more are becoming places where AI generated images of friends are shared as a joke. And that can be either just extremely upsetting, or it can be done by kids in a bullying way, or it can be done by kids thinking it's a joke when actually they're committing a criminal offence if they've made it a sexualised image. I will never judge parents' decisions on what is appropriate for their own children. You know, I have lots of friends whose kids are on WhatsApp. I just think it's worth considering, if they're not on WhatsApp, they don't have to see those images, because it will start happening and you don't have to go through the whole trauma potentially of that, never mind the process of having to report to schools, police potentially. It's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's probably about time for us to wrap it up, but I want to bring up this here that follows on from this WhatsApp problem from Chris, who's sort of saying here, since ubiquitous centralized AI models are hard to manage for your kids, so like WhatsApp, what do you think could be a competitive alternatives parents groups and startups could introduce, i.e. a parent-owned controlled AI wrapper that implements safety defaults that choose, like a cybersecurity app, or decentralized AI models, etc. This is an interesting one. I on principle, I kind of like the idea of it, but I think in reality, it'd be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I think you again. So I think that question's directed at you, Dave, and you're the best person placed to answer it.
You're smarter about this than me, Tara.
Oh no, I don't think so. But I mean, one thing I'd just say that if I'm interpreting the question correctly, and I may not be, but just be aware that putting like a safety wrapper on something doesn't necessarily take away the personification of the model, and therefore the emotional bonding and all the issues that come downstream from that. I don't know if perhaps what you're suggesting, Chris, it is something that doesn't do that. I'm not completely sure, but it's just to emphasize that getting rid of harmful content isn't necessarily making it a safe model.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important distinction. Tara, before we go, I need to sort of put in a little sponsored message here. We will be back after this little sponsored message, which has some AI-generated kids in it. Here we go.
It's the game the whole boardroom's playing. It's Monopoly AI.
I'm laying off the entire sales team.
I'm replacing customer service with a chatbot called Brian.
Your chatbot promised a customer a refund policy that doesn't exist. Pay damages. Data breach. Go directly to court. Do not collect $200.
Half your staff are gone and nobody knows how anything works anymore.
My competitor bought the same tools, but train their people first. I hate this game. We've all lost.
Play a better game with AI, one where everyone wins. Talk to the Gen AI Academy.
Oh, how nice to see kids playing a board game, isn't it?
That's amazing.
Tara, thank you so much for answering those questions. And the one thing that there was a lovely sort of comment was that, saying I don't know is a wonderful answer. We don't hear that enough. And
I say it all the time. Thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Dave.
I think that's one of the important things about this is that actually we know there's an issue, but we don't have all of the information and we don't have all of the answers yet, but we need to be doing something about it and moving things forward. And thank you for doing that from all of us.
Thank you.
We appreciate you heading this up and leading the charge.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for everything you're doing. And, I've learned a lot from you. So thank you.
You're very welcome. This is, and thank you everyone in the comments. It's been lovely to see the comments alive, as always. Such a fantastic crew that we get at these shows. Thank you all very much. We will be back in a couple of weeks. I am planning to do my new show format next week. I just need to get some stuff together for that. That's been holding me back. But thank you all so much again. And any questions, just keep the chat going. And we'll have a look in the chat and see if we can answer any questions if there's anything after the show. But thank you all so much. I don't think it's going to play the outro, so I'm just going to say goodbye and press the end button. Love you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.